My stepdaughter mocked me in front of my entire family, and when I tried to discipline her, my wife screamed, "She's not your daughter." So the next morning, I canceled her tuition, credit card, and car insurance. I'm not looking for advice really, just perspective maybe, because right now, I don't feel bad, and I'm wondering if that alone says something about me. I'm 47, married to my wife Eden, 44. We've been together for 7 years. She has a daughter, Alice, 19, from her previous marriage. I don't have kids of my own. Never really planned on it, but when I met Eden, I got attached to her, and eventually to Alice too. She was 12 when I came into the picture, quiet, respectful, and honestly a good kid. Her biological dad, Darren, was nowhere to be found back then. He left when she was around 10, popped in a few times, promised things, disappeared again. The usual fun dad who never follows through story. I never tried to be her replacement father. I just showed up, paid the bills, helped with schoolwork, set rules, kept the house running. For a long time, Alice seemed to appreciate that. She'd call me for advice, help me around the house, even made me a Father's Day card once. I still have it somewhere in my drawer. Things started shifting around the time she began college last year. Darren suddenly decided to be a father again. He'd show up with gifts, talk big about freedom and independence, and play the cool dad act, no rules, no curfews, just validation and empty wisdom like, don't let anyone control you. It was subtle at first, but I could tell her attitude started to change. Little eye rolls here and there, avoiding family dinners, making snide comments about me being too old-fashioned. I didn't make a big deal about it. Teenagers test boundaries. I get it. Fast forward to last month, my birthday dinner. I didn't want a big thing, just family and close friends. We had both sides there, including Eden's parents, and, for the first time in years, Darren. That should have been my first red flag, honestly. Eden insisted it would mean a lot to Alice if he came. I agreed, thinking maybe it'd be civil. I was wrong. At first, everything was fine until it wasn't. Darren started telling old stories, trying to make himself sound like the fun guy again. Alice laughed at all his jokes, cutting me off mid-sentence a few times. I ignored it until she made some remark about how, at least her real dad doesn't treat people like they're his employees. A few people laughed, thinking it was a joke, but it wasn't. The tone was off. It was sharp. I told her that wasn't an appropriate comment to make at the table, calmly. I wasn't angry, just direct, but she smirked and said something along the lines of, "Well, you're not my real dad anyway. You don't get to tell me what to do." The room went dead quiet. Even Darren looked awkward for a second. I turned to Eden, expecting her to say something to remind her daughter that respect still applies regardless of biology. Instead, she snapped, "She's not your daughter. You can't talk to her like that." That part hit harder than anything Alice said, because it wasn't just anger, it was defensive, like she'd been waiting to say it. I didn't argue. I just stood up, thanked everyone for dinner, and left. No scene, no shouting, just done. I went home, sat in my office for a while, and thought about everything I'd done over the years. The tuition, the car insurance, her credit card, all under my name. I thought about how many times I'd been told, "Thank you," versus how many times I'd been dismissed the moment it was convenient. So I logged into my accounts and started ending things. Tuition payments canceled, car insurance removed her as a dependent, credit card disabled, all of it. By morning, I was already at work when my phone started blowing up. Alice's tuition portal locked her out. Her card declined. Her car couldn't be used legally anymore. Eden called, panicked, asking what happened. I told her the truth. I said, "You both made it clear I'm not her father, so I'm done paying her father's bills." Then I hung up and went back to work. Since then, Eden's been trying to talk. She keeps saying she didn't mean it that way, that she was just upset in the moment. Alice, on the other hand, hasn't reached out directly, just sent a text asking if I could fix her tuition situation until things calm down. I didn't respond. I've spent the past week thinking about it, and honestly, I feel calm. Peaceful even. I've done enough. I've been more of a father than Darren ever was, and still somehow ended up being treated like an outsider. I don't think I owe anyone an apology or an explanation, so I'm not asking if I went too far. I'm asking if I should have done it sooner. Update 1. I didn't expect so many people to care about what happened, but reading some of the comments helped me see that standing firm wasn't being harsh, it was being consistent. And for the first time in a while, I feel like things are starting to make sense again. When I posted, things were tense at home. Eden barely spoke to me, Alice was ignoring me completely, and Darren, her biological father, was back to playing the hero dad role. He told her he'd step up now that she was grown and didn't need me. I kept quiet, I wasn't about to beg to stay involved in someone's life who'd made it clear they didn't want my role. But reality has a way of showing up fast when people rely on fantasy. Alice's tuition suspension hit immediately. She called the university in a panic, assuming it was a technical issue, but they confirmed that the account holder, me, had closed the payment line. Then her car insurance lapsed a few days later, and she got pulled over for an expired tag. The tow bill was more than what was left in her checking account. That's when Darren swooped in. He promised her he'd fix everything and told her he'd already wired the university a payment to get her classes back on track. I didn't interfere. I let him handle it, just like he said he would. A week later, the university contacted me. As the original guarantor, they had to inform me that the payment had bounced. Darren had vanished again. No calls, no explanations, just gone. That's when I started seeing a shift in Eden. I think seeing Darren do what he's always done, talk big, disappear fast, woke her up. She looked exhausted one morning and told me she finally understood what I'd been saying all along. She admitted that in that moment at dinner, she got defensive out of guilt. She said she hated how harsh it sounded when she told me Alice wasn't my daughter because she knew, deep down, I'd been the only real parent that girl ever had. I appreciated her saying that. I accepted the apology, but I made it clear that didn't mean I was reversing anything. No argument this time. Things between us have been calmer since then. We've started rebuilding, but differently. She's been taking more initiative handling the household stuff she used to expect me to cover, stepping in when Alice lashes out, not leaving me to play the bad guy. It feels less like I'm being taken for granted, and more like we're finally operating as equals. As for Alice, she's had a hard fall from that pedestal Darren put her on. She called me, or, more accurately, she screamed at me over the phone when her card got declined while out with friends. I didn't raise my voice. I just told her that her father's name should be on her accounts if he wanted to be the one calling the shots. She hung up. A week later, she tried calling again, but this time it was different. No yelling, just crying. She said Darren stopped answering her messages. I told her I wasn't surprised. I didn't comfort her or say, "I told you so." I just told her that life tends to humble everyone eventually, and it's up to her whether she learns from it or not. Eden has been on my side since then. She even told Alice that she needed to start contributing if she wanted to stay in the house. I think hearing that from her mom hit harder than anything I could have said. Update 2. After I stopped paying for my stepdaughter's tuition and cut off her financial support, Alice decided she didn't need my help. She packed up some of her things, left the house, and moved in with her biological father, Darren. Apparently, he told her she could stay with him and his new girlfriend while she got back on her feet. I didn't say anything about it. I just told Eden that Alice was an adult now, and she was free to make her own choices. It didn't take long before that situation collapsed. Darren doesn't have a stable life. He moves around, changes jobs every few months, and always seems to have some new business scheme that never pans out. He's one of those people who's charming for about 5 minutes before you realize everything that comes out of his mouth is just smoke. For a while, he managed to convince Alice that he had money. He took her shopping, let her post pictures with his car, and promised to pay off her tuition himself. Eden kept trying to reach her, but Alice ignored her calls. Then about a month later, Eden got a message from Darren's girlfriend, a woman named Julia, saying Alice had left their house and needed to come get her things. I didn't ask for details, but when Alice showed up at our door the next day, she was carrying a single duffel bag and looked completely drained. From what she told Eden later, Darren had been using Alice's name for credit card applications and small personal loans. When Julia found out, she kicked both of them out. Alice realized that the car he'd been driving around was rented, and the reason his phone had been broken was because the company had cut it off for non-payment. Her credit score had tanked before she even knew what hit her. Eden was devastated. She wanted to comfort her, call lawyers, maybe even try to pay off the debt herself. I told her we weren't doing any of that right away. Not because I didn't care, but because Alice needed structure, not a bailout. I told Alice she could stay with us on one condition. She'd be treated like an adult, not a dependent. That meant contributing to the house, paying a small amount of rent, handling her own expenses, and respecting the rules of the home. She agreed without arguing, probably because she didn't have anywhere else to go. I even drew up a simple agreement and had her sign it. Nothing legal, just a paper with her signature saying she understood her responsibilities. She rolled her eyes at first, but still signed it. For the first few weeks, I kept things straightforward. She got a part-time job at a local cafe, started paying her share of groceries, and began to quiet down. There was no shouting, no lectures, no guilt tripping, just natural consequences doing their work. It was around that time I found out about the loans Darren had taken in her name. She was too embarrassed to tell me, but one of the collectors called the house asking for her. That was enough for me to dig deeper. I pulled the reports and saw multiple accounts she didn't open. When I confronted her about it, she admitted what happened and said Darren had told her it was for his business and he'd pay it off fast. I didn't yell. I just told her to sit down and I put my phone on speaker. I called Darren right there in front of her and Eden. He answered all cheerful, pretending like nothing was wrong until I mentioned the debt. I told him clearly and calmly that he had 30 days to clear everything in Alice's name or she'd file a report. I also told him if her credit wasn't restored, I'd personally make sure his employer knew about the fraud. He tried to argue, then tried to guilt trip me, then hung up. But 2 weeks later, the accounts were mysteriously marked as closed and paid. I don't know how he managed it, but I didn't care. The point was made. After that, things in the house changed. Alice started acting differently, not perfect, not instantly grateful, but quieter. She started asking me questions about bills, about budgeting, even about things like car insurance. She didn't ask me to pay for them. She just wanted to understand how they worked. One evening, she came home from work with dinner for all of us. Nothing fancy, just takeout, but she sat down, looked at me, and told me she was sorry. She said she believed all the things Darren told her because I'd always been strict, and he made it sound like that meant I didn't care. I told her I forgave her. Things between her and Eden started healing too. Eden stopped trying to shield Alice from the reality of her own actions. She finally admitted that she'd been too defensive before, that she thought protecting her daughter meant saving her from consequences. It was the first time we were on the same page as parents. Alice began working full-time hours and eventually started saving money again. She was still technically out of school, but mentioned wanting to reapply next semester. I told her that if she handled her finances responsibly, she could make it work on her own this time. The change in her wasn't dramatic, it was steady. She wasn't suddenly the perfect daughter, but she had stopped acting like the world owed her something. She even started calling me dad sometimes, not in a performative way, but casually. It surprised me the first time she said it, but I didn't comment. There's still a long road ahead, and she's learning how to fix the damage Darren caused, especially the credit mess. But she's doing it herself, and that's more valuable than any money I could have given her. Update 3. So, a lot has happened since I last posted. Things were finally starting to calm down around here. Alice was working part-time, paying her rent, and had even managed to save enough to cover her first semester back at school. Eden and I were solid again, not pretending nothing happened, but actually working together like a team. Then, out of nowhere, Darren ended up getting arrested. Apparently, someone he scammed filed a report that spiraled into a larger investigation. He'd been using other people's identities, not just Alice's, and opening credit lines under different names. When his name came up in Alice's fraud paperwork, the investigator contacted her as part of the case. She didn't want to testify at first, said she just wanted to move on. I told her that closure doesn't come from forgetting, it comes from finishing what was started. She thought about it for a few days and decided to do it. When the court date came, Eden and I went with her. Darren tried to act confident, but it was obvious he was cracking. He wouldn't even look at me at first. When he finally did, he said something about how I'd turned his family against him. I didn't respond, just sat there. He tried getting in Alice's head, saying I manipulated her. But she stood her ground. She told the court exactly what happened and how he used her name for loans. Watching her speak like that, calm, composed, unflinching, was something I'll never forget. It wasn't anger driving her anymore, just certainty. After it was over, Darren was found guilty on multiple charges. Alice broke down crying when the verdict was read. Eden hugged her, and I just stood close enough so she knew she wasn't alone. I thought that was the end of it, but a week later, Darren's girlfriend Ivy decided to insert herself into the story. She messaged me first, thanking me for helping, and saying she admired how I handled everything. I didn't think much of it. I responded politely and left it at that. But then she started showing up, once at my shop, once outside my office, each time acting like it was just coincidence. The last time she brought coffee, saying it was a thank you for helping put Darren away. It got uncomfortable fast. She started saying things like, "You're too good for that house," and "Eden doesn't deserve a man who carries everyone else's weight." I cut her off quick. Told her to stop wasting her time, that I wasn't interested, and that what she was doing was disrespectful to herself more than anyone. She laughed it off at first, then tried to make it sound like she was just joking. But there was nothing casual about it. I made it clear that she wasn't welcome to contact me again, and if she kept showing up, I'd call security. After she left, I told Eden everything, every word, every message. She didn't overreact. She just said, "Of course she tried." Then she smiled and told me she wasn't worried. That's when I realized how much things between us had changed. Months ago, that would have turned into a shouting match. Now it was just trust. Later that week, we got the letter confirming Darren's sentence. He'd be serving time for fraud and identity theft. Alice didn't celebrate, she just said she was done with that part of her life. She's been different since then. More patient, more grounded. She paid off some of her smaller debts, built a decent savings account, and re-enrolled in school part-time. Sometimes she still apologizes for how she acted that night at dinner. I always tell her it's over, not because I've forgotten, but because she already fixed it in the way that matters through her actions. Final update. It's been about a year since the last big events with Alice and Darren, and I wanted to give a final update because things have settled into a rhythm that feels solid. Not perfect, not fancy, just steady and real. Eden and I are doing well. After everything, our relationship feels different, stronger, clearer. We trust each other fully now. We don't argue over money or household decisions because we have a clear system, responsibilities divided, and boundaries that stick. We actually communicate instead of reacting. It's weird how calm life feels when you remove the chaos that once existed. Alice is thriving in a way I didn't fully expect. She's managing her own finances, paying her bills on time, and rebuilding her credit from scratch. She works part-time while finishing college at night and has really learned to budget and plan. She's not struggling in the emotional way she used to be. She's learning to navigate life independently. She moved out into her own small apartment a few months ago. This wasn't done in rebellion or to get away from us. It was because she wanted the independence she had been missing, and she was proud to do it herself. She still checks in regularly, and she comes over for dinner on Sundays sometimes. When she's here, she helps cook, talks about her week, and even asks for advice when she needs it. There's no entitlement anymore. Nothing she gets automatically, nothing she expects. Everything she has now is earned, and it shows in the way she carries herself. I never reactivated her tuition, credit card, or car insurance. I didn't undo the lesson because there was no need. She understands the value of having control over your own life and finances now, in a way that money or punishment never could teach. The lesson stuck, and she didn't resent it, not after she saw how much easier life actually is when you handle things yourself. The court case against Darren is long over. He's serving time for identity fraud and embezzlement. Ivy, his girlfriend, disappeared from our lives completely after she tried to flirt and manipulate me a few weeks after the hearing. That was strange to deal with at the time, but I didn't let it escalate. I told Eden everything, we set boundaries, and it ended there. We didn't dwell on it, and it faded quickly. There's a peace in our house now. No shouting, no disrespect, no chaos. Dinner is calm. We share meals. We talk. Alice has stopped testing boundaries because she's learned they're there for her own benefit, not as a control mechanism. Eden and I still occasionally laugh about some of the earlier madness, but only in hindsight. The tension, the manipulation, the lies, that's all gone. And the most important part? The respect is real now. Alice calls me Dad consistently, not out of obligation, but because she chooses to. Eden and I don't need to manage her life anymore. She's capable, independent, and responsible, and we can finally be proud of that without guilt, without fear, without interference from her biological father. Looking back, cutting off her financial privileges was the right move. It wasn't about punishment. It was about showing her the life she could have if she took control. It was about making her realize that structure and consequences aren't cruel. They're stability, guidance, and care. And it worked. She doesn't resent it, and she doesn't need me to fix anything anymore. She's capable of doing it herself. Eden and I have stayed together because we've both grown. She learned accountability quickly and without drama, and I stayed steady. It wasn't easy, nothing worth doing ever is, but it was worth it. We built something real from something that almost fell apart. The last year has been quiet, steady, and peaceful. We still have dinners together, and Alice visits when she can, but the dynamics are healthy. We've all learned lessons about respect, boundaries, and what real love looks like. I don't feel the need to step in constantly, and Alice doesn't feel the need to test limits.